All right. All right, we'll try with this mic. I don't always do the best with the mic. We'll see how it goes. Otherwise, I'll grab the handheld. So it's really great to be here once again. I have always enjoyed being here, and I love getting together with your leadership whenever that's possible. So it's great to see you folks again. Word has it on the street that I'll be preaching a psalm that was actually recently preached here, Psalm 131. I just found that out about 15 minutes ago. So either the good news is that you will have totally forgotten what was preached before, which I forget my own sermons pretty quickly. Probably better is that in God's kindness, He often repeats the same thing to us again and again and again and again. In fact, you probably know the most common command in Scripture is do not be afraid. And just again and again, God tells us that. So it means little for us to hear a sermon once again from the same passage, but hopefully I won't contradict anything here, but we'll go for it. So Psalm 131, if you have a copy of the Scriptures, that's what we'll be in today. Nice, simple passage, 3 verses. Do you want me to switch to the handheld? What's that? Good? Okay. So simple passage, only 3 verses, but it's one that's actually very hard to live in the good of. Easy to understand, but hard to actually walk in. So a little bit about me, in case you don't know me. My wife's name is Danica, so Dan and Danica. We've been married for 23 and a half years now. We've got 3 kids, 17-year-old, 15-year-old, and an 11-year-old. Girl, and boy. So one of the things that my son and I will do a lot is you can find us up at the Turf. Anybody been to the Turf yet? It's a skate park, maybe about a mile away from here, and they want this to be one of the best in the country, and it is spectacular. So my son scooters, but then he also took up skateboarding about a year ago, and I love watching scootering and skateboarding. I've definitely tried it, and my wife warns me against it, okay? Because I've taken some good falls real quick. It looks like a ton of fun. We were just there last night, and he loves to go in those bowls, and he whips through that bowl, and I'll sit there and I'll watch this, and it looks so easy when I'm watching them. And not only him, but all the people that are just really good, and it just goes like, that can't be that hard. You just stand on that and let the skateboard do the work, and you go around. And so I'll get on that, but as soon as I step on that, I feel incredibly unstable. And if you've ever stood on a skateboard, you've probably experienced that unless you are a good skateboarder. Now, I think the skateboard is a good illustration for what my soul often experiences. How I experience the week. I feel like I'm on this skateboard that is so unstable. The reality is we live in a world that is chaotic. You can't plan for this week in terms of what's actually going to happen. And our soul feels incredibly unstable. Maybe that's because there's sorrow in your life. There's loss. Came out of nowhere. And you just feel like you can't get stable within. Maybe it's because there's confusion. You feel like life was going this way, and all of a sudden it's taken a quick turn. And you're just confused with life, or you're confused with other people, or you're confused with yourself. Why does this always come out of me? Maybe it's because you're full of anxiety. You're scared of the future, or you're scared about a big meeting coming this week. You're scared about your children. Maybe it's because there's just this ongoing discontentment. You know, if just this would happen, life would be okay. And there's just this unsettledness of discontentment. Maybe it's because you're angry. And you really are frustrated with people, you're frustrated with God because He's put you in this circumstance, and life feels unstable. And we can go on and on. Life feels unstable. And so where do we go? Where do we go to find stability in life this week? You know, many of us go to all the wrong things very quickly. I sure do. Go to relationships, resources, reputation, intellect, our own skills, We turn to things that we feel like are going to make us feel stable, and they'll never do it because we're limited creatures, and everything around us is perishing. And there's one place we can go. And David wants us to go to that in this psalm today. He wants you to leave knowing, where do I go to find rest for my soul? And it's very simple. He tells us right in the third line of the Psalm 131, hope in the Lord, and you will find rest for your soul. Let me read Psalm 131 for us. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. This is God's word to us, beloved. Does it matter that this is sitting here? Is this confusing it? Oh, okay. So there you see it. Verse 3 gives us his whole point. Hope in the Lord. Now, obviously, you might ask, well, what does that look like? How do you hope in the Lord? He actually gives us two ways, or two pathways to hope in the Lord. First one is in verse 1, by not demanding God answer all our questions. And the second one is by simply climbing into the lap of God's leadership. That's how we hope in the Lord. But let's walk through it. I actually want to start from verse 3, because this is his whole goal today. Hope in the Lord. You want rest for your soul? Hope in the Lord. So what does it mean to hope? Well, we use that word a couple different ways in the English. We might use the word hope for something that's just wishful thinking, not really based on any substance, though. So, for example, if you were going camping next month or in August, and you said to someone that you were going camping, you said, I really hope it's going to have nice weather. I hope it doesn't rain on us. Right? That's wishful thinking. But you don't really have anything to base that reality on, right? I mean, it's a month and a half away. How do you know it's not going to rain? It oftentimes rains at that time. So it's just this wishful thinking, but not based on any kind of foundation here. But we also use the word hope in a little bit different way. So let's say I said, hey, this morning I got a text message from UPS. It says your package is on its way. It's on the truck, right? It's out for delivery. That's the little comment you get on your text message if you've ever gotten that. Your package is out for delivery. And I turn to my wife and I say, hey, I got it, our package is on the way. I sure hope it makes it here today. Now that is based on a foundation, right? It's based on evidence. Do I know it's going to get there? No. But I have a high level of confidence that my package is going to arrive because that little message says that they have taken my package and placed it on a truck, and that truck is headed out the door, and sometime today it's going to drop it off. Those are two very different ways of talking about the word hope. And the Hebrew word is talking about the second kind here. The Hebrew word for hope is meant to be this confidence that you have on this foundation, this evidential, or this evidence that gives us reason to hope. And so it has this idea of waiting, but waiting with expectancy and confidence, because you know what's being promised is going to happen. And so that's what he means when he says hope, but then we have to consider the object of our hope. He says hope in the Lord. And look at the text there, verse 3, where it's capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. That's Yahweh, hope in Yahweh, the sovereign God, the covenant-keeping God, the one who is all-knowing and all-powerful, the faithful God who is good. He says, hope in that one. You see, David knows our tendency to hope in everything else, in people, in power, in reputation. He says that will never work. You want stability for your soul? You hope in Yahweh, the only one who will never fail. Beloved, we serve a God who cannot fail. He never learns something new that he didn't know before. He never makes mistakes. He'll never encounter a problem and go, I'm not sure how to handle this one. This is who he's saying, hope in that one. And if you hope in that one, you'll find rest for your soul. And notice here, I don't think that this is simply a command to us, like you must do this, and if you don't do it, shame on you. This is an invitation from David. You want to rest for your soul this morning? Come to the one whose river never runs dry. Come to the one who will give you rich food for your soul. Come and find stability. This is an invitation from David. Now let me ask you, how does that sound to you today? I sure want that. I don't think you'll find a person alive today that doesn't want that. David says, come. Now, what does it look like? Like I said, there's two ways, two pictures that he paints for us. First one is verse 1, second is verse 2. The pathway to hoping in the Lord, we'll go through first one first, is to not demand answers from God. There we see in verse 1, read it again there. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up, my eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. So notice, first of all, that he uses the negative there 3 times. Not meaning bad, but the not. Saying, this is what I'm not going to do. Okay, we oftentimes do this in our culture where you're trying to tell somebody what to do. You first tell them what not to do, because now you're going to clarify what you should be doing, right? So if a parent was going to tell a child, hey, today, when we're gone and the babysitter's here, I want you to serve your brother and sister, okay? And what I mean by that is do not demand that you always go first. Do not take their toys. And do not push them. Okay? What I'm doing is clarifying things that you must not do in order now to say, this is what I mean when I say serve. Okay, so you're saying, don't do this. David's saying, I'm not going to do this. So what does he say? My heart's not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. Those are 2 pictures there. The second one, I think they're both the same. The second one there is, most think that in that culture, to look at somebody who is superior to you with lifting your eyes up to their eyes was considered disrespectful. It's a way of arrogance. And so both of those pictures at the beginning, the verse 2 lines, are talking about an arrogant heart. David said, I'm not going to be arrogant towards God. And what is an ultimate way of being arrogant? Here, he says, I'm not going to occupy myself, my mind, my heart with things that are too great for me, things that I can't figure out. And I'm going to demand that God gives that to me. He says, I'm not going to do it. If I'm going to find rest for my soul, and rest for my soul is by trusting and hoping in God and waiting patiently for Him, then what that means is to take a posture that I'm not going to demand that God answers all my questions. Brothers and sisters, life is crazy. It always has been crazy, and it always will be crazy until the Lord comes again and consummates His kingdom. And David was a man full of questions in his soul, full of them. You know David's story, many of you. What happens in 1 Samuel chapter 15? David, a young boy, gets anointed as the next king of Israel. And you know what that happens the next chapter, chapter 16. He defeats Goliath, helps the whole country through this young boy. And you know what happens a few chapters later? For the next decade, where does David live but caves? Because the most powerful man in the land, Saul, is hunting him and throwing spears at him. David rescued a community, and when the soldiers came from Saul and asked if David was there, they were ready to hand David over. David just risked his life to help these people, and they're ready to get rid of him. David's leading this group of 600 soldiers, and when they left and went off on a raid, they come back, and their town and their little village that they had set up was kind of destroyed. And so all of his soldiers picked up stones to stone David. David, I can guarantee you, was a man full of questions. God, how in the world do you keep letting this happen to me? I help these people, and they're traitors to me. And I'm all alone. David's own son wanted to kill him. Created a revolt in the country, Absalom. You think that didn't raise questions in the soul of David? David was a man full of questions. And I know something about you. You're full of questions. I'm full of questions about life. Now, they range very widely what those questions are, but a lot of them are what if questions. And you're looking at the future, or how long? How long is this going to happen? How long are you going to let this be? What if I get sick? What if I die before my kids are older? What if something happens to my kids? What if something happens to my spouse? What if I lose my job? What if this meeting goes terrible? What if I look bad in front of other people? What is that person thinking about me? On and on and on and on and on we could go. You're also full of why questions. Why, God? Why did I have to be born into this family at this time in history? Why did you have to give me this personality? Why does the same thing come out of me and I fail the same way and I just keep wrecking things? Why, Lord? You could do things to change this. Why? Why? And some of those are actually quite small. They're just irritating. God, why am I stuck in traffic? I need to get there. You could open this up. Why don't I have hair on my head, right? I mean, some of you have beautiful heads. Why don't I? It's not that bad, but I love hair. Why is my smile a little crooked? Any of you have crooked smiles? Why? Well, just give me a nice smile. No, those aren't big deals, but those just, when those pile up, they just eat at you. And here David's saying, I'm not going to demand that God answers those questions. If I'm truly going to find rest for my soul and hope in God, at some point, I have to get to the place where I say, God, I'm okay not having an answer. Now, the thing is, having those questions is not wrong. Those questions are always going to be there because we are limited creatures. We're trying to figure out the world. The difference is how far are we going to let them rumble around in our soul before we say, God, I'm okay not having an answer. And all of us cross the line. Those times where we just keep ruminating over the conversation that just happened, the times where we're full of anxiety, the times when we're scheming to change things. At some point, all of us cross the line. We're occupying ourselves with things too great for us, too marvelous. Now, how about you today? How do you commonly occupy yourself with things too great for you? I would contend it's not, do you ever do that? I'm arguing that you do, because I sure do. But do you know how it happens? And if nothing comes to your mind, one thing you could do is ask someone that loves the Lord, that loves you, that knows you, and ask them today, how do you think I occupy myself with things that are too great? Because I guarantee they see it. You might not see it, but they do. And give them full freedom to explain to you, this is where I think you struggle and you try to control the world too much. David here is trying to call us to freedom. As scary as it feels to actually say, you know what, God, I'm okay not having the answers, David is calling us to freedom. Find rest for your soul and not demand the answers anymore. So that's the first way he says to hope in the Lord. The second is you notice a but or instead. So don't occupy yourself with things too great. Instead, do this. And he gives us a nice picture. Climb into the lap of God's leadership. There we read it again, verse 2. But I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. It's such a beautiful picture here that we have. Many of you know what a weaned child would be. It's when the child no longer needs the mother for milk. You know, when a child is not weaned and a child is hungry and needs something and in the arms of the mother, what does the child do when the child's not weaned? It is a restless soul, let's say. An unweaned child, when it needs something, it screams and claws for the milk from mom until it gets it. And it sweats. Give me the milk. But when a child is weaned, it no longer needs mom for milk. The child, when it has a need, it still loves, the boy or girl loves to climb into the lap of mom. Why? Because over those years of getting milk from mom, the baby has learned that mom has the answers. Now, at least from the baby's worldview there, right? Mom knows everything. And mom can help. And mom's a place of safety. And so a weaned child in the lap of the mother, it means it's come to mother simply for safety and trust. I'm not needing anything from you. I just need you because you have the answers that I'm looking for. And I'll just come and rest in your lap. That's what David is painting the picture here, is saying that he, at some point, with all the questions going on, he has to get to the place where he says, you know what? I'm just simply going to come to the Lord and I'm going to climb into his lap like a weaned child looking to him to care for my soul. And I mean, what other option did David have? He's out there in a cave all by himself or in the wilderness. Where else is he going to go? And where else are you going to go, beloved? Are we really going to look inside to try to find solutions to life? Or are we going to climb into the lap of God's leadership? David Paulison, who was with CCEF, Christian Counseling Education Foundation, he's now with the Lord. He used to do this thing where he would call it the anti-psalm. And he would encourage people to take a psalm and write the opposite. Because sometimes it helps you see some of the connections in the passage and just to hear what the opposite would be to chase after something else. So I wrote an anti-psalm for 131, at least verses 1 and 2. And I find it helpful. So this is what the anti-psalm says here. Psalm 131. O Lord, my heart is full of arrogance. My eyes are full of pride. My mind is busy, fretting over things I cannot figure out, demanding answers to my questions. Therefore, I am restless and noisy inside, like a scared child who does not trust its mother, like a scared child running away, lost in the city, all alone. That is my soul within me. I find that picture to be helpful. I like the connection there. Notice what he's saying. When I fret then, or if you do the anti-psalm, when I'm fretting and I'm trying to figure out life apart from God and I think I can do it, I become like this child that's running away in the city. Can you imagine a city running around Milwaukee all by themselves? It's a terrifying sight. The anti-psalm says to trust in my own answers, that's what I become. And therefore, I'm not going to trust, I'm not going to occupy myself with all those questions and try to get the answers. Demand that God give them to me so that I become a calm and quiet child in the lap of its mother. Well, there you have it. I trust that's nothing new, right? To hope in the Lord, beloved, the sovereign God, the good and faithful God. Trust in the Lord and you will find rest for your soul. I doubt anybody walked in here and be like, I've never heard that in my life. Right? We all know this. The question is, why do we struggle with this? What makes this so hard? Why do we sometimes prefer to become like a child running through the city and demanding God answers our questions? Why is that? Yeah, that's true. I'll give you 3 reasons why I can think of why I struggle with this, and maybe you'll identify with some of these. The first one is I find it uncomfortable. Because in order to actually follow this psalm and put it into practice means I have to admit how weak I am and how limited I am. Because that means I legitimately have to look inside and say, I don't have answers for that, and I'm okay. That's very uncomfortable. I don't like that. It makes me feel very vulnerable. And so we simply don't like that. So that's the first one. It's just uncomfortable. Second one, I would say it's unproductive. Or at least it feels unproductive. Even this, like I said, this word hope has this idea of confidence, but it's also waiting. Sometimes it's even translated as being patient or wait. We don't like waiting. Out of all the history of the world, we are probably the culture that hates waiting the most. I mean, just think how some of you are old enough to have had dial-up come into your home for the computer. Could you imagine if we had our kids use dial-up nowadays? It'd be a nightmare. Microwaves, cell phones, everything in life is all rapid fire. And this says, wait. And we don't like waiting because we love productivity. There's some time ago I was reading an article called, I think the name of the article was Why Waiting is Torture. And it told a story of this Houston airport years ago that was getting a lot of complaints for how long it was taking people to get their baggage after the flight. And they put some sort of a think tank together, and they came up with a way of getting the time from when you come to the arrival gate to actually walking away with your bag down to 8 minutes, which industry standard, that was pretty spectacular. Okay, I mean, you just think 8 minutes from the time you get off that to the arrival gate to getting your bag, that's pretty good. But the complaints stayed the exact same. It didn't move the needle at all. And so now they were really scratching their head because they're thinking, like, what in the world are we supposed to do? How is this? And then someone in the group said, you know what? It takes people 1 minute to go from the arrival gate to the carousel, and then for 7 minutes, people stand and wait for their bag. What if we took the arrival gate and we moved it way over here, so it takes 6 minutes to get to the carousel. Now it's 2 minute wait, and the complaints went to 0. Same exact time. It's 8 minutes either way. In our mind, standing here doing nothing is unproductive, and we hate unproductivity in our culture. We don't like silence. There's actually somewhat of a little bit of a movement encouraging boredom because we hate boredom. And so a psalm like this and actually putting it into practice and saying, I will simply wait for you, God, it screams at us, and our soul doesn't like it. But that's the reality, beloved. God calls us to wait. And what feels unproductive to us, it's not unproductive to God. God's always getting things done exactly as he plans. And you read the scriptures, and God is not always in a hurry, if you haven't noticed that. I mean, just even think of the direct promise that God gave to Abraham. Abraham, you are going to have a son, and through him, I'm going to make all the nations blessed through that son. And got that at age 75 was the promise. Do you remember how old Abraham was when he had the child? 100 years old. That's right. That's right, buddy. 25 years from a direct promise from God. And I demand God answers me in 25 seconds. It feels very unproductive to wait for the Lord. But beloved, that's where you find rest for your soul. A calm and quieted soul. So first, I find it very uncomfortable. I find it unproductive. And last, I'm frankly afraid of God's leadership. And that's probably like the nice way of saying it. If I really looked inside, a lot of times I don't like God's leadership. You see, as I look at my life in the past, in the present, in the future, I would probably write the script a little bit different. And frankly, I fear that if I bring my fears to God, my cares to God, he's probably not going to change the situation. He might actually call me to sit in the pain and sit in the sorrow, sit in the confusion. And that's exactly where he wants me. And I don't like that. You see, because I read the scriptures and remember what Jesus says. In this world, you will have a happy and safe life. No, that's not what he says, does he? In this world, you will have tribulation. And you read about this on and on and on throughout the New Testament, that God calls his people into pain, into suffering. And I don't like that idea. And so somehow in my deluded mind, I feel like if I try to take control and move the future exactly how I want, that I'm going to be able to avoid it because I don't trust the way that God's going to lead me into the future. And I'm afraid that God's going to call me to hardship. And maybe that's you as well. But what if it's true? What if God is powerful enough and good enough and faithful enough that even if he calls me to sit in the pain, that is exactly the safest place in the world for me because I'm in his lap? Beloved, being in God's lap doesn't mean it's going to be safety, doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable in the world, but it's the safest place to be, in God's lap. How are you like a child running through the city? What would it be like to be a community of people that for the next year you just really helped one another climb into God's lap? Brother, it's okay. I don't understand that either, but let's not occupy ourselves with things that are too great for us. Sister, I don't have the answer either, but let us simply go to God and trust that to him. God is inviting us today, this week, to bring all our cares to him and simply leave it at his feet. And you will find rest for your soul, a quiet and calm heart. Oh, beloved, hope in the Lord, and you will find rest for your soul. Well, as we close, I do want to give a quick disclaimer. I don't think that a passage like this is meant to paint a picture that life is just simply, I'm hoping in the Lord. I know the world is crazy out there, but I'm so happy. I don't think that's what this psalm is about. The same psalmist that wrote this, if you see it, David, at the top there, is also the one that wrote many laments in our psalm, in our psalter here, right? 1/3 roughly of the Psalms are lament. David also wrote not just this, but also, my God, why have you forsaken me? How long, O Lord? How long will you hide your face from me? Those are real questions from David's soul. And I don't think that this is in contradiction to the lament. I actually think lament is a fight to get the soul here. Okay, lament is a way of bringing your complaints to God and placing him at his feet and saying, God, I don't understand this. It doesn't make sense to me. Yet I know somehow that you're still faithful and I'm going to climb into your lap. I don't like it. I don't understand it, but I'm going to trust you. That's what I think lament is. And when we think of the ultimate psalmist, you hear Jesus on the cross crying Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? And you see Jesus in the garden. You remember that holy scene, the night before he was betrayed. It says he tells his disciple, my soul is sorrowful, even unto death. It says he goes a little farther and he fell on his face. Now, when I read that scene, I picture Jesus so weak in terror of what's ahead that he simply falls on his face. If you've ever experienced just sorrow and fear so deep that your knees give out. And he's laying on his face there, and what does he say? But he cries out to God, and he says, my Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me. I don't want it. Yet not my will, yours be done. That's the picture there. It's wrestling through the pain, wrestling through the confusion, wrestling through the sorrow, and at the end of this day saying, but yet your will be done. Jesus gives us the ultimate picture of what it looks like to actually walk in the good of this passage, even in the midst of the pain and the confusion. And he's not just simply giving us an example. He's giving us power to be able to trust that this psalm is good for us too. Because why did Jesus go forward? The book of Hebrews says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Because his beloved people were on the other side of the cross in the resurrection, that he was winning a people to be his very own who could come and be right with God by trusting in his death. So that we of all people, sinners though we be, weak as though we be, that we can actually come to God and say, God, you will care for me. I will trust you. This promise isn't for everyone. Those who reject God, they can't look to God and that he will care for them this way. They will sit under his judgment. For those who trust in Christ, we can look at this psalm and say, for me too, God will care for me this week if I lay at his feet and climb up into his lap. And that's our hope today, beloved, to hope in the Lord by not demanding God answer our questions and by climbing into his lap of his leadership, because the Lord Jesus bought us a place in God's lap. Let us pray together. God, we confess how quickly we go astray and are running throughout the city, trying to figure out life on our own. And God, I pray that you call us once again, invite us back into your lap because of the work of Christ, who has opened up the way for us. And God, give us the humility to come before you, not demanding you answer all of our questions, but be willing to wait, even in the confusion, even in the sorrow, that you will care for us. Thank you that you are a good Father, and you always do what's best for us because you love us with an unchanging, unfailing love. In the name of Christ, amen.